Hello all, welcome to DTKSS. In the current session, we are going to discuss about preview of feature of the GitHub Copilot. So the GitHub Copilot tool helps to the developer to write the code by suggesting the prompts or suggestions when they are writing the code. So when you write the code, you will receive the suggestion from the GitHub Copilot either when you started writing the code or by writing a natural language comment. So I'll switch to the Visual Studio to describe on that particular statement. So here I want to implement a method to update the employee record. So how I can do here is, for example, here I started writing the code HTTP put, and here I want to pass the input parameter is ID. So when I write this particular statement, it started prompting me the suggestions what is the next statement it is required to implement. So this is the basic method when you are updating the code. But here you can add the validations saying that you want to validate whatever the ID you are passing is that exist in this employee model, whatever the input you are collecting is exist or not. You can add the validations. How you can add the validations are int ID is not equal to employee emp.emp ID, then return bad request. Else you can query the employee to get that employee, and if that employee is null, you can return the bad request, or you can return no record, no content found. And also you can, after, if the employees exist, then you can update that particular employee and you can return the result. So this is the way GitHub Copilot will help you by providing the prompts or suggestions when you are writing the code, which helps to save your time. So what GitHub Copilot can do? The GitHub Copilot will help to convert the comments into the code. So when you write a natural language comment here, the GitHub Copilot has been analyzed the your context of that code, that particular comment, and it will generate the code automatically. So the feature is converts the comments into the code, and also it will help to generate the unit test cases. So when you are writing the unit test cases, it will prompt you whatever the code is required to cover that particular scope of the code. So auto prompt that particular unit test code. Also it will help to generate the SQL query. For example, when you are implementing the data access layer, which required to communicate with the database and iterate that particular data into the list. So this particular code will prompt automatically. So how the GitHub Copilot is performing all these jobs? So when you are writing the code, so when you are started writing code into the Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code, the GitHub Copilot extension, whatever the extension you have been installed into the particular code editor, it will read the context of the code. What is the context of the code? It will read the context of the code, and it will send that code bytes to the GitHub Copilot. This GitHub Copilot AI model will helps to communicate with OpenAI Codex and which helps to communicate with public data repos, and it provides the suggestions whatever the required to complete that scope of the code. Awesome. Why? Because of it will save your time when you are writing the code. It start prompting means you can give the accept the suggestions and you can complete your assigned task within the time or before the time itself. I have created a detailed video series on this GitHub Copilot, and which provides you the overview on what is the GitHub Copilot and subscription pricing for the GitHub Copilot, and how we can register the GitHub Copilot and add that GitHub Copilot into the Visual Studio or Visual Studio Code editors, and also how you can develop the web APIs faster than usual, and how you can use the GitHub Copilot Chat effectively. And we also discuss on the slash comments exist in the GitHub Copilot Chat. So if you did not watch on those videos, if you are required to know about the GitHub Copilot in detail, you can watch these videos. If you have any queries, you can reach me at my email address d2ksoftwaresolutions@gmail.com. Until now, we have talked about whatever the existing feature in the GitHub Copilot current version. So now we are going to discuss about what are the new features going to add for the GitHub Copilot. So the GitHub Copilot Next team is continuously adding the new features to this GitHub Copilot to support the entire development lifecycle for the developer. So the next version they are calling as a GitHub Copilot X. So what is the GitHub Copilot X? So the GitHub Copilot X is a vision for the future of GitHub Copilot. It has been included the new features that are not yet available in the current version of Copilot. What are the features is chat and voice interface, support for pull request, answering questions on the docs. So now we talk about this chat and voice interface. So the Copilot X will able to understand and respond to the natural language commands, both chat and voice. This will make easier for the developer to interact with the Copilot and get the help whatever they need. So this particular Copilot chat is a chat interface that let you interact with GitHub Copilot and to ask and receive the answer that related to coding. I'll switch to the Visual Studio, and here I have opened the GitHub Copilot. Once you install this GitHub Copilot, you will get this window, chat window. This particular chat window will help to the developer able to communicate with the GitHub Copilot continuously and get the suggestions or prompts. I already discussed in our previous video sessions how you can add or how you can install this particular GitHub Copilot in the Visual Studio editor. So now here we'll give you an overview of this particular GitHub Copilot. For example, you want to write some code. So for example, I'm writing the code is generate code operations for employee record, employee model class. See here, I already created a model class, employee model class, which contains the 3 properties. And here I'm asking to write a code operations for the employee model class. So I have written a natural language comment here and click on this enter button. So the GitHub Copilot start prompting me whatever the code or the whatever the context I want to write here. So it was writing for me and giving the code samples. So here you can able to see it. What it was suggesting is, sure, I can help on that. However, I will need to know the programming language and framework you are using. For example, are you using C# with entity for framework, Python or Django, or JavaScript with Node.js and Express? So if you want the suggestions accurate, then you need to mention all these details. Anyhow, it's giving me the code what I was written, what I required here. If you are using C Sharp, here the basic example to implement the CURD operation for the employee model class using the entity framework. So which contains a get employees, all employees, get employee record by ID, create the employee and edit the employee and delete the employee. Perfect. So this particular code, if a developer writing, may takes 30 minutes or 1 hour. It depends on their coding skills. But when I use this GitHub Copilot Chat, I got this particular sample code within seconds. I can use this particular code to copy into my files and to develop that particular solution. Very simple. But here one thing you must remember, the AI suggestions, whatever this GitHub Copilot is providing suggestions might be inaccurate. So this the GitHub Copilot team, they are not confirming whatever the code suggestions they are providing is accurate, 100% accurate. Might be 99% it will be accurate, 99% of cases it will be accurate. But as a developer, you need to ensure that whatever the code suggestions or code prompts you are getting is up to the mark, or is following the higher standard of code practices or not. You are the one has to decide. But this particular code prompts will help you to finish your particular assignment fast. If for example this particular code is not that higher standard, then you can still asking the code, or you can start by writing the code. So GitHub will still analyze the code, the pattern which you are writing, and able to provide the suggestions on the code you are the code context you are writing. So this is about the GitHub Copilot Chat. Even you can ask more questions. Add JWT token authentication for API. So it will prompt you whatever the code is required to apply the JWT token authentication for the APIs. See, all the code has been giving the prompts here. So this is about this GitHub Copilot Chat. Now we talk about one more wonderful feature is voice interface. Even it is more effective to the developer. That is like the developer even no need to type their whatever the code they want in the using the keyboard. They can use the voice interface and providing the voice commands and saying that whatever the code they have been required, they can able to ask those particular code by the voice commands. So this particular interface will helps to convert the code commands or voice commands into code. And now we talk about this particular pull request support. So the Copilot X will helps to the developer to review and improve the pull request. How it will helps is it will helps to write a detailed comments on that pull request, so that the reviewer able to understand the scope and they can able to review easily. So which helps to them to provide a higher quality of the code. Also this feature been extended to analyze the code which they are writing the pull request to the master branch or whatever the branch they are matching. It will analyze the code and provides the analysis. If there is any test cases is not covered for that particular code coverage, then it will prompt you that analysis as well. So in this way the developer able to get alerts if they miss any of the test scope for the test cases, writing the test cases. They can able to finish that test cases and they can raise the pull request again and maintain the higher quality of the code. Perfect. So this is about the pull request. So meaning that when we are developing the particular solution, it is start prompting. So what once you completed your solution, what you will do, you will check in or you will raise the pull request. So when you are raising the pull request, it will help to write the a detailed comment for the reviewer to understand what code changes you have made or what code you have been modified. Perfect. Next, it is adding one more feature is it is providing the analysis that whether this particular code coverage been up to mark or not. So it will be an alert to the reviewer or it will be an alert to the developer who is developing the code. They can able to implement the suggestions whatever the analysis provided by the GitHub Copilot. And the next feature here is GitHub Copilot Docs. So this particular feature allows the developer to ask the questions related to the GitHub Copilot documentation. This particular feature helps to the developer to learn more about the code they are working and find the information they need quickly. So they can able to finish their assignments quickly. So in this, using these particular features, whatever the features they are going to add into the future releases, the entire life cycle of development, it will help to the developer to provide a higher quality of code, also to maintain higher standards of the code and able to generate that particular code or solutions within the timeline or before the timeline. So this is all about the preview of feature of GitHub Copilot. Thank you very much.